Hello, beautiful Libra. Have you been feeling that quiet shift in the air as May slowly turns into June? This season carries the feeling of a hidden door beginning to open, as though something long delayed is finally starting to move again. This is more than an ordinary transition between months. The energy around you now feels tied to return, renewal, and a softer kind of transformation unfolding beneath the surface. Through late May and early June 2026, you are stepping into a rare energetic turning point. It feels like standing between seasons while the evenings stretch longer and something once paused begins finding movement again. This period carries two forms of blessing. One reaches your physical world through financial support, opportunities, or overdue progress, while the other works more quietly through emotional healing and inner clarity your spirit may have needed for longer than you realized. So if you found yourself watching this video today, pause for a moment and breathe with me slowly. This timing was not random. It feels more like your readiness, finally meeting the season meant to receive it. You didn't stumble into this message by accident. Something within you has been guiding you here quietly for a long time. This goes beyond astrology or prediction. This is about alignment. Libra, you kept showing up with grace even during periods where your effort felt unseen. You held on to hope while uncertainty pressed harder against your heart than faith sometimes could. Still, none of your patience disappeared into silence. Every moment you chose honesty over bitterness, every quiet prayer, every act of resilience was heard in ways you may not fully understand yet. That's why this video is arriving as confirmation more than information. What felt delayed is beginning to move again. What seemed blocked is slowly opening. And what left your life may return carrying more healing, clarity, and value than before. Take a moment to sit with this question. What has changed inside you that prepared you for this season? Because Libra, it feels as though your spirit reached toward this energy long before your mind understood it. You are not here by coincidence, and some part of you was already searching for this message before you arrived. The signs have likely been appearing around you for some time now. Repeating numbers, dreams that linger after waking, a sudden feeling in your chest when someone's name crosses your mind unexpectedly. These moments are not meaningless. They feel more like quiet confirmations guiding you toward awareness. And I'd love for you to participate in this moment intentionally instead of only observing it. In the comments below, write this affirmation to anchor yourself into the energy unfolding between May and June. As May turns into June, I open myself to clarity, healing, and what's finally returning. You can also share the number you keep seeing lately, whether it's 7, 11, 222, or something else following you repeatedly. This is more than symbolism. It becomes a way of telling the universe that you are no longer simply hoping for alignment. You are stepping into it consciously. And truly, thank you for being here and sharing your energy in this space. Every comment, every like, and every moment you stay connected strengthens the energy surrounding this message. Your presence becomes part of something larger, like ripples spreading quietly outward through openness, honesty, and hope. So stay with me a little longer, Libra, because what unfolds through the rest of this video carries something deeply meaningful for you. This season is no longer asking you to wait endlessly. It is asking you to recognize what has already started shifting beneath the surface. As May softens into June, you may finally understand why this transition feels so personal to you. There is something powerful about the way one season melts quietly into the next. For Libra, the final days of May and the beginning of June 2026 feel like more than a simple change on the calendar. They carry the feeling of an energetic threshold where the past begins loosening its grip and something long promised finally starts to awaken. Astrologically, there's a reason this shift feels so noticeable now. Mercury is moving gently alongside Venus in your sign, Libra, allowing conversations, answers, financial movement, and emotional clarity to reach you with less resistance than before. Mercury carries communication, while Venus reflects value, connection, and self-worth. Together, they begin loosening what once felt delayed, especially in relationships, confidence, and financial matters that may have remained stagnant for too long. At the same time, Jupiter is illuminating the part of your chart connected to stability, resources, and personal value. When this energy becomes active, it often signals that you are finally prepared to receive more than you once allowed yourself to expect. What returns now may not feel like simple repayment. It feels closer to restoration, as though life is recognizing your readiness to move beyond old limitations. And perhaps even more meaningful, Saturn has recently completed a long retrograde through a deeply sensitive area of your inner world. This suggests that certain lessons have finally settled into wisdom, and where heaviness once lived, movement can begin again. It feels like the closing of a long emotional chapter where the balance has finally been restored. Beyond astrology, there is also a deeper symbolic layer unfolding here. The transition between late May and early June carries its own quiet paradox. One season fades, while another begins opening at the edges, like standing in a garden before sunrise, where the air still feels cool, yet beneath the soil, something has already started reaching toward the light. That is why this season carries the feeling of a double blessing. One arrives through tangible support and external return, while the other moves inward through healing, emotional clarity, and reconnection with yourself. This moment asks you to soften instead of forcing answers. Slow your breathing. Rest your hands over your heart and simply notice what rises naturally inside you. Even a few quiet moments during this transition can begin changing the way you relate to your own life. This is not about trying harder or proving your worth through constant effort. It is about presence, honesty, and trusting that you are not late to your own becoming. You may remember moments from your past where life suddenly felt strangely still, almost as though everything paused around you for a second. That feeling was never meaningless. It was alignment moving quietly through your spirit. For some people, it feels like the presence of God, not loud or dramatic, but steady, gentle, and deeply reassuring. Most people move through life too quickly to notice these softer forms of guidance, yet silence often carries more truth than noise ever could. So when I ask whether you've been sensing something approaching lately, something difficult to explain but impossible to ignore, I mean it sincerely. That feeling may simply be your future beginning to move closer toward you. Libra, this message is not only about insight, it is also a reflection of how far you've quietly come. No matter how you define spirituality, one truth remains the same. You are being invited to trust the timing unfolding around you and allow yourself to receive what has slowly been making its way back toward you. It's easy to imagine abundance as something sudden or dramatic, but what returns during this season is not random luck. It grows from energetic honesty and everything you once gave sincerely. Energy offered with intention never fully disappears, even when results seem delayed. Sometimes life is not denying what you need, it is simply redirecting it so it can arrive in a form that truly matches who you are becoming. When the Six of Pentacles appears in tarot, it reminds us that balance eventually restores itself, not only spiritually, but in everyday life too. The patience, kindness and fairness you once offered without recognition begin finding their way back toward you again. It may appear through overdue support, a forgotten opportunity reopening, or someone finally recognizing the value they once overlooked. The universe has a quiet way of remembering what we sometimes forget within ourselves. And when the star card appears, it reminds you that hope is never wasted when it's rooted in patience, consistency, and quiet faith. Even when nothing seemed to move, something beneath the surface kept growing. Like roots stretching through dark soil before spring arrives, your energy has never truly been standing still. This kind of financial return rarely arrives dramatically. It may come through an overdue payment, delayed approval, renewed opportunity, or someone finally recognizing your value. What matters most is not only the amount itself, but what it represents emotionally. It becomes proof that what you gave sincerely was never lost, and that balance still finds its way back in time. If you've ever whispered, "If it truly belongs to me, it will return," then you were already aligning with that energy. And as late May shifts into early June, it feels as though stagnant energy around your finances is finally beginning to loosen. That's why this season asks you to become more mindful of the relationship you already have with what's currently in your hands. Creating space for saving, growth, and self-care is more than practical right now. It signals that you are ready to hold more with calmness instead of fear. Financial energy and emotional energy often move together closely, and when stress settles into your body through tension or racing thoughts, it can become harder to feel open to the support already trying to reach you. So pause for a moment. Rest your hands gently over your heart and ask yourself softly, who would I become if the pressure inside me finally eased? Then let the answer rise naturally, without judgment. Sometimes that honesty is exactly where healing begins moving again. People often overlook the quieter blessings that arrive through money or support. Yet I've seen how one timely return can restore much more than finances alone. I once knew someone who spent months feeling dismissed after a former employer ignored what she was owed. When the payment finally arrived, what touched her most was not the amount itself, but the feeling that her patience and integrity had finally been recognized. So Libra, as you move through this season between late May and early June, reflect honestly with yourself. If a financial blessing arrived today, how would it soften your fears or reshape the way you see your future? This isn't simply wishful thinking. It's part of preparing yourself to receive what may already be quietly returning to you. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive through explanations. Sometimes it comes through tears surfacing unexpectedly, a deep breath you didn't realize you were holding, or a sudden release in your chest. Libra, if old emotions have been resurfacing lately, try not to mistake that for regression. What you are feeling may actually be release, unfolding quietly beneath the surface. This is part of the deeper blessing moving through this season. Yes, financial restoration may be returning, but the second and quieter form of abundance arrives emotionally. It feels less like a dramatic breakthrough and more like rain touching dry ground after a long season without softness. A kind of healing that reminds your spirit it no longer has to hold the past so tightly. In tarot, the Ace of Cups often represents emotional renewal and inner peace returning again. Yet this energy appears just as often when something painful is finally acknowledged and released. Not only when a new chapter begins, but when an old ache loosens its hold on the heart. Real forgiveness begins the moment peace matters more than resentment. And Libra, this season seems to be guiding you gently toward that space now. Whether the pain connects to a relationship, a family wound, or even an older version of yourself you judged too harshly, the energy unfolding between May and June is asking your heart to soften little by little. Water carries strong emotional symbolism during times like this because it reflects cleansing, movement, and renewal. If you've been noticing more rain, dreaming about oceans, or feeling drawn toward rivers or quiet water lately, your spirit may be asking for emotional release in ways your mind hasn't fully processed yet. So again, Libra, give yourself permission to acknowledge what your heart is still carrying, not through confrontation, but through honesty and gentleness toward yourself. Tonight, try writing down the name of someone who has occupied more emotional space in your life than you intended them to. Then instead of replaying old pain, write one sentence of release for yourself. And if even that feels difficult, simply write, "I forgive myself for carrying this for so long." You may be surprised by how much energy begins moving once that inner space starts opening again. I've witnessed this kind of shift many times. One woman I knew spent years struggling financially while carrying deep pain connected to her father. One evening, she quietly chose forgiveness for herself without reopening the relationship. 3 days later, an unexpected payment arrived from a former client she had forgotten about. The money mattered, but what changed her most was the feeling underneath it. It felt as though life had finally started flowing again after years of emotional resistance. When the heart remains tightly closed around old pain, it becomes difficult to feel fully open to support or peace. But once your energy softens, other things often begin shifting too. And Libra, this matters deeply. You do not need to repair the past in order to move forward. You only need to stop carrying it as though it still defines who you are today. That is where real transformation begins. There are seasons where nothing appears outwardly broken, yet something inside starts feeling out of alignment. A familiar room feels different. A space that once comforted you suddenly feels crowded with old energy. For many Libras right now, this feeling reaches deeper than aesthetics. It feels like your spirit quietly asking for movement and renewal. The urge to rearrange your space, spend more time near water, or seek a quieter environment is not random. These impulses often appear when your inner world is preparing for a new emotional rhythm. And because you are Libra, harmony matters deeply to you, not only in relationships, but in your surroundings and emotional atmosphere as well. In healing, movement does not need to be dramatic to matter. Sometimes it begins through small shifts, like opening the windows more often, changing your workspace, or clearing away objects tied to an older version of yourself. Even a simple reset in your room can feel like releasing tension your body has carried for months. The repeated appearance of the numbers 2 and 11 during this season deepens the message even further. The number 2 carries the energy of peace and emotional balance, while 11 often appears during periods of awakening, intuition, and quiet new beginnings beginning to unfold. If you've been noticing repeating numbers on clocks, receipts, or in unexpected places lately, don't dismiss them too quickly. Sometimes the outer world reflects what your spirit already senses before your mind fully understands it. During this transition between late May and early June, these quiet signs can feel like gentle encouragement, guiding you towards something new before every answer becomes clear. You are not being asked to figure everything out right now, only to move toward what already feels true inside you. I've seen this happen in real life more times than I can explain. Someone clears out old belongings, shifts their room toward natural light, or changes a small part of their environment, and suddenly life begins opening again. An overdue message arrives, a difficult conversation softens, an opportunity appears where there had only been silence before. This is not coincidence, it's alignment. When your outer environment changes, your inner energy often shifts with it. And once that happens, life begins responding differently in return. The universe tends to meet you at the level of the energy you consistently hold. So if you've been feeling restless lately, even in places that once felt comforting, ask yourself gently what your spirit may be trying to rearrange. Not only in your space, but in your habits, your routines, your self-talk, and the old emotional weight you continue carrying. This season is not asking you to rebuild your life overnight, but it is asking you to listen honestly to what no longer feels aligned. Sometimes change begins very quietly, opening a window after feeling emotionally closed for too long, packing away something tied to the past, standing in your room and simply saying, "I'm ready for movement again." Real transformation rarely arrives through dramatic moments. More often, it begins softly, in the calmest parts of your life. Libra, Something inside you may already be asking to move forward, not through urgency or force, but through your willingness to be present with yourself. The deepest shifts often begin in stillness, through honesty, softness, and simple acts of intention. Writing down what you truly want, breathing slowly before the day begins, or saying, "I'm ready," out loud, may seem small, but emotionally and spiritually, those moments matter. You do not need to force your next chapter into existence. You begin opening toward it by becoming emotionally available for what is already trying to reach you. Every calm and intentional choice sends energy outward, and energy naturally responds to steadiness, openness, and self-trust. So when you pause and write the words, "I open the door to what I deserve," you are doing more than repeating a phrase. You are creating a new emotional tone within yourself. And once that inner signal becomes calmer and clearer, life often begins feeling less blocked and more receptive again. Think of it like dominoes slowly falling into place. One small act of alignment leads naturally into another. Drinking water with presence, stretching before sleep, letting go of guilt you no longer need to carry. Little by little, movement builds beneath the surface until what once felt frozen begins flowing again. I once knew someone who started each morning by quietly thanking her glass of water before drinking it. She wasn't asking for miracles. She was practicing gratitude and allowing herself to soften. Within days, her body relaxed, her thoughts became calmer, and not long after, a job opportunity arrived after months of silence. The gratitude itself was not the miracle, the openness behind it was. She stopped bracing herself against life and began receiving from it instead. That is often how transformation works, Libra. Not through dramatic gestures, but through presence and emotional readiness. And that's why I invite you to participate in this moment instead of only observing it. In the comments below, write whichever affirmation feels true to your spirit right now. Maybe it's, "I am ready." Maybe it's, "I no longer chase what is already finding its way back to me." Or perhaps, "As May turns into June, I welcome clarity, healing, and what's finally returning." Words spoken with sincerity carry energy, and once expressed, they become part of the movement already unfolding around you. More than anything, Libra, I want you to understand this clearly. You were never meant to stand outside your own life, waiting to be chosen, rescued, or made worthy. You have always been part of creating this next chapter, even in seasons where nothing seemed to move. Every moment of honesty, openness, and emotional presence matters now. Real change has never been about proving yourself. It has always been about becoming available for what is already trying to reach you. So ask yourself gently, are you willing to receive what has already started moving toward you during this transition between May and June? Not someday when everything is perfect, but now, exactly as you are. What belongs to you no longer needs to be chased endlessly. It is waiting for you to unlock the emotional door you have kept guarded for too long. Sometimes, all it takes is one quiet breath and the willingness to say, "I'm here, I'm ready." And once that openness appears, life begins shifting piece by piece. The most meaningful moments rarely arrive through noise or spectacle. They appear through stillness, through the feeling that something inside you has finally softened after carrying tension for too long. This season between late May and early June carries that kind of quiet power. It feels less like a deadline and more like a doorway between old versions of yourself and the person you are becoming. The return you've been sensing is not only financial or external. It also arrives through emotional clarity, self-worth, and your ability to meet yourself with greater compassion. You were never locked out of the life meant for you. Beneath the waiting and self-doubt, you were always holding the key. Energy responds less to force and more to consistency, patience, and emotional alignment. And the frequency you've been building quietly through resilience and honesty is beginning to echo back into your life now. Even when no one else noticed your effort, something deeper was still moving beneath the surface. You carried yourself through difficult seasons with more grace than you realize. You stayed kind when bitterness would have been easier. You remained emotionally open, even while tired. And now life is beginning to respond to the version of yourself you fought quietly to become. Everything you've lived through brought you here not to harden you, but to open you more deeply to yourself. You didn't just survive, you softened, expanded, and became more aware of what truly matters to your spirit now. So as this message settles into your heart, carry these questions gently into this next season. If you truly believed your shift had already begun, what would change in the way you live each day? What boundaries would become clearer? What old pain would you stop carrying? And what part of yourself are you finally ready to reclaim, now that your waiting season is beginning to loosen its hold? Libra, this is more than insight. It is an invitation to stop shrinking your readiness and begin participating fully in the life already trying to meet you. And this doesn't happen through pressure or dramatic reinvention. It happens through small daily choices, through honesty, self-care, and actions that remind your spirit it is no longer standing still. So breathe with me for a moment. Let this season settle gently inside you. In the comments below, write whichever affirmation feels most aligned with your heart right now. Maybe it's, "I am ready." Maybe it's, "I open the door to what I deserve." Or perhaps, "As May turns into June, I welcome clarity, healing, and what is finally returning to me." And if this message touched something meaningful inside you today, consider liking the video, subscribing, or sharing it with someone who may need these words too. Every comment and every shared moment helps this energy continue reaching the people who are ready for it. You are not simply watching from a distance, you are part of something much more connected than that. No matter what unfolds next, remember this, Libra. You have never been alone in your becoming. And as this new season opens around you, you are no longer standing outside the life you've been hoping for. Little by little, breath by breath, you are already stepping into it.